It was a freezing night, the kind where even the city lights seemed dim and the air burned in your chest with every breath, when Alexander Grant, a millionaire CEO known for his ruthless business decisions and untouchable presence, found himself stopping at a deserted bus stop on his way home from another long day at the office. The snow was falling in heavy flakes, painting the city white, when he noticed a fragile figure curled up on the bench. A little girl, no older than 7, lay there in a thin dress, hugging herself against the cold, her lashes dusted with frost as she slept. Alexander froze, the sight piercing him in a way no boardroom confrontation ever had. Without thinking, he shrugged off his expensive wool coat and draped it around her small shoulders. She stirred slightly, her lips trembling as though she had been whispering for help even in her dreams. He crouched down, his voice soft, far gentler than the tone his employees were used to hearing, and said, "Come with me." She opened her eyes slowly, eyes wide with fear and innocence all at once, and for a moment he saw the reflection of his own lonely childhood in them. He extended his hand, and after a pause filled with hesitation, she took it. That night, Alexander didn't return to his penthouse alone. Instead, he brought her with him, guiding her into the warmth and safety of his home. She was shy, quiet, and almost too tired to speak, but she whispered her name, Leela. He made her warm soup, wrapped her in blankets, and sat by her side until she fell into a peaceful sleep. For the first time in years, the vast walls of his home didn't feel cold and empty. The next morning, everything changed. Alexander cancelled all his meetings, something his assistants couldn't believe. Instead, he dedicated the day to finding out how a little girl had ended up alone on a freezing street. He discovered that Leela had been abandoned, left to wander from shelter to shelter, until she had nowhere left to go. She had no family who cared enough to look for her, no one waiting for her return. His heart clenched, for though he had millions in his bank account, he realized he too had spent years living with a different kind of emptiness, surrounded by wealth but starved of love. He took her shopping that day, not to show off his money, but to give her what she had never known, comfort. New clothes to keep her warm, shoes that fit her small feet, and toys that made her smile for the first time since he had met her. He took her to a cafe where she devoured pancakes with the pure joy only a child could show, and he watched with a quiet vow forming in his chest, that this child would never be cold, hungry, or alone again. At first, Leela didn't quite trust him. Life had taught her that people leave, that promises are broken, and that kindness is fleeting. But Alexander was patient. He read her bedtime stories, he asked about her dreams, and he listened, really listened, in a way no one ever had before. Slowly, the walls she had built around her little heart began to crumble. She laughed again, she sang softly to herself, and one evening, she slipped her tiny hand into his while watching a Christmas movie, as if claiming him as her safe place. That single gesture brought tears to Alexander's eyes, something he had not allowed himself in decades. The next step he took shocked his peers, his colleagues, and even himself. He didn't just provide temporary shelter for her, he made arrangements to adopt her, to become her father in every sense of the word. The world called him many things, a genius, a shark in the boardroom, a billionaire with no time for anyone. But to Leela, he became dad, and that title meant more to him than every award, every deal, every fortune he had ever accumulated. As weeks passed, his life transformed in ways he could never have predicted. The mansion that once echoed with silence now rang with giggles and the patter of little feet. His mornings no longer began with emails and coffee, but with Leela tugging at his sleeve to show him her drawings. Business trips were shortened, meetings rescheduled, because no deal was more important than being there for her. She taught him how to live again, to see wonder in the simplest things, a snowman in the yard, a shared ice cream cone, the sound of lullabies before bed. But what Alexander gave Leela was far more than material comfort. He gave her safety, love, and the unwavering assurance that she belonged. And in return, she gave him something his millions could never buy, a family, a reason to come home, and a heart full of joy. Together, they healed each other's scars, proving that sometimes the greatest fortunes are not found in bank accounts, but in the unexpected bonds that change everything. From that one cold night at a bus stop, two lonely souls found warmth in each other. What Alexander did the next day didn't just change Lila's life, it changed his as well. For in choosing to open his heart to a little girl who had nothing, he discovered he finally had everything. Come with me, those three simple words slipped from the lips of Alexander Grant, a man who had built empires, conquered boardrooms, and worn the armor of a billionaire CEO so tightly that few ever glimpsed the man beneath. And yet on that freezing night, as snowflakes fell silently from the sky, it was not his wealth or power that defined him but his humanity. For as he saw the fragile little girl curled up on a bus stop bench, her small body trembling against the biting cold and her face pressed against her arms as though the world had long since abandoned her, he felt a pull in his chest stronger than any business ambition he had ever known, and he could not walk away. He draped his coat around her, bent down so his eyes met hers, and with a voice softened by compassion told her those three words that would change both of their lives forever. And when she slowly opened her weary eyes and hesitantly placed her tiny hand in his, something shifted within him, something he had buried beneath years of corporate battles and lonely penthouse nights. And for the first time in years, Alexander felt he was exactly where he was meant to be. The next morning, while his office buzzed with calls about missed meetings and executives panicked at his unexplained absence, Alexander's heart and mind were consumed only by the child now sleeping peacefully in a warm bed in his home. Her name whispered to him the night before, Lila, a name that lingered in his thoughts like a melody, and he vowed then and there that her life of loneliness would end, and so he cancelled his calendar, silenced the world that had once ruled him, and devoted himself to her, taking her hand as he led her into shops filled with coats and shoes, watching as her wide eyes lit up not with greed, but with the wonder of having something of her own, marveling at the way she clutched a soft toy to her chest as though it was the first friend she had ever been given. And when they sat in a cafe and she ate pancakes with a joy that made strangers smile, Alexander realized he had built towers of glass and steel, but none of it compared to the warmth blooming in his chest as he watched her laugh with syrup on her cheeks. Yet beneath her shy smiles he could see the scars of abandonment, the wariness in her eyes that asked silently if this, too, would be taken from her, and so he chose to show her, not with grand speeches but with quiet consistency, that he would not leave, reading her bedtime stories when the world outside screamed for his attention, listening to her timidly share her dreams, being patient when she hesitated to trust, and celebrating each small moment when she let him in, whether it was a giggle at a silly face or her small hand slipping into his as though declaring him hers. And then came the moment that solidified everything, when Alexander made the choice not to simply shelter her temporarily but to adopt her, to make her his daughter in every sense, to give her the family she had been denied, and in doing so claim for himself the family he never realized he was missing. And the world looked on with shock, for the man once known for his relentless pursuit of power had found something greater. But Alexander no longer cared for the whispers of society, because each morning when Lila's laughter filled the mansion, when her little footsteps echoed across halls once empty and cold, when she looked up at him and called him Dad, he knew he had gained more than all his wealth could ever buy. And as days turned into weeks, the CEO who had once measured his worth in billions now measured it in bedtime hugs, shared ice creams, snowmen built in the yard, and the simple yet profound joy of belonging. For what began with 3 words at a lonely bus stop had become a lifetime of love and healing, a reminder that true fortune is not in gold or glass towers, but in the fragile, beautiful bonds we dare to create. And so it was that a little girl with nothing and a man with everything found each other on a winter's night, and together they discovered that in opening their hearts, they had given each other the one gift neither had ever known: home.